In Lesson 12, we're going to continue building our fluency for multiplying decimals and multi-digit whole numbers. Our first problem that we're going to work with is 2 31/100 times 22. Step 1 is we want to find the estimate for a multiplication sentence by rounding the factors. You want to round the largest place value in each of your factors. For 2 31/100, your largest place value is your ones. And you're asking yourself, am I rounding down to 2? Or are you rounding up to 3? And if you look at your midpoint here, it is 2.5. And seeing where your factor lies on that number line, 2.31, would fall underneath the 2.5, so we would round our factor down to 2. And then looking at 22, we're going to be rounding to the tens column. So we're either rounding down to 20 or up to 30. And we figure that out by looking at that next number over and asking ourselves, is it 5 or more, where we would round up, or is it less than 5 to round down? Here it is 2, which is less than 5, so we're rounding down to 20. Then we would do our multiplication problem. 2 times 20 is 40. One way that I can check and make sure that is right is by looking at how many zeros we have, which is 1, and I have 1 in my answer, and then I multiply 2 times 2, which is 4. So I know that my estimate is 40, so my answer is going to be somewhere around 40. When going back and checking the reasonableness of our answer, we can take a look at this sentence frame right here and kind of fill in the blanks with greater than or less than. The actual factors are blank than the rounded factors, so my answer will be blank than my estimate. For this problem right here, our actual factors are greater than our rounded factors. So we know that our answer is going to be greater than our estimate. So when we get to checking the reasonableness, we're going to know that our answer is going to be more or greater than 40. Step 2 is you set up your standard algorithm. I like to have my numbers with more digits on top. That way I have to do less multiplication, but it works either way. So here I'm going to put 2 31/100 on top and multiply that by 22 on the bottom. What you'll notice here is that our numbers are not actually lined up by place value because I have ones here and hundredths above it, tens here and tenths above that. So one way that I can fix this problem is renaming my decimal, which is step 3. Two ways to think about this in renaming your decimal. My lowest place value here is in the hundredths, which would mean that I would rename 2 31/100 as 231/100. The other way to think about this is, what can I multiply 2 31/100 by to make it a whole number? Here, to move the decimal to the end, to make it a whole number, not a decimal, I'm moving my decimal 1, 2 place values to the right, which means I'm multiplying, because I'm making a number bigger, by 100. And I'm doing 100 because the 2 zeros mean that I am multiplying, or that I'm moving my decimal 2 times. So 2 zeros, which we learned when we were talking about place value. But in any case, whatever strategy we use to rename our decimal to make it a whole number, to make sure that our place values are lined up, we want to make sure that we keep that in mind and either label our answer using our place value, or we will divide, which is the opposite of multiplication, our answer. Step 4 is we solve our standard algorithm. We're going to start always with the bottom right, the ones column on the bottom, and multiply that by all those numbers above. So we go 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. And 2 times 2 is 4. Now I move on to my next number in my bottom, which is 2, but it's not actually 2, it's 20, and we show that in our partial products by recording a 0 right here to show that this 2 is actually 20. And then we continue our multiplication. So 2 times 1 is 2. Also making sure that you're lining up those digits. 2 times 3 is 6, and 2 times 2 is 4. These two values are my partial products, and to get my final answer, I need to add them together. So 2 and 0 is 2. 6 plus 2 is 8. 4 plus 6 is 10. I leave the 0 and carry the 1. 1 plus 4 is 5. So my answer that I have here is 5,082. But I know that that is not the correct answer because my estimate is 40. So you have to start thinking about how can I change this answer, or where do I place the decimal to make my answer reasonable. Step 5 is to write your answer in standard form. So I know that I was multiplying by hundredths, so that means that my answer is in hundredths, which means my answer is also in hundredths. So I need to write it in standard form. I know that hundredths is 2 place values after my decimal, so I just draw my lines to keep my brain straight, and then I start filling in my numbers. So 2, 8, 0, and 5. So my answer becomes 50 and 82 hundredths, which is greater than 40 and a reasonable answer according to my estimate. Another way that you can think about finding your answer is, instead of writing it in standard form, you can use the idea of dividing by what you multiplied up here. Because I multiplied 2.31 by 100 to get 231, that means I need to divide my answer down here by 100. And I know that when I am dividing, I am moving to the left, which is making my answer a smaller number. And I move my decimal 2 place values because I have 2 zeros. So I have 1, 2, which gives me the new placement of my decimal and tells me that my answer is 50 and 82 hundredths, which is exactly what I got when I wrote it in standard form, still greater than and reasonable than my estimate. And finally, kind of one of the last strategies that you can use to get your answer for your multiplication equation in a decimal is you can just kind of check the reasonableness of your answer. You know that your answer is going to be around 40, so you know that if you put your decimal here, 5 is not close to 40. So you can say that answer is not reasonable. then you could say, I know if my decimal's here, 508 is not a reasonable answer because it's nowhere next to 40. And so then you can say, oh, if I put my decimal here, that gives me 50 and 82 hundredths, and 50 is definitely a reasonable answer because it is close to 40 and it is greater than 40, which is what we identified in the beginning when we were finding our estimate. So 3 different ways to find your answer in decimal form. Either writing it out in standard form, remembering how you renamed your decimal, multiplying or dividing by 10, 100, 1,000, or whatever place value your original decimal is in, or just checking the reasonableness.